Welcome to Abuelas en Acción, a multicultural podcast for our common good. I'm your host, Marie Dahlstrom, and I'm so happy to be here today with my co-hosts, Itzia Mejia and Consuelo Zaragoza. We're so happy to have you join us today at our virtual roundtable, where we join together to honor the memories and legacies of our abuelas who are living and those who have passed. Without our abuelas, we would not be here today. Abuelas en Acción is a multicultural and multi-generational podcast where we lift our voices for our common good, where we speak about peace and justice, where we speak about hope and gratitude, even in the midst of our pain during this time of so much turmoil and grief. We resist efforts to drown out our voices. I can feel our abuelas joining us too, and loudly speak our truths for peace and justice. Our topic today is so rich, and we have really been looking forward to our interview today with our guest. Today, we were talking about La Chola, Chicana feminism, our rich Chicana history, and the empowerment of all Latinas. A little bit about my history. My life was forever changed back in 1987 when I read the classic book edited by Sherry Moraga and Gloria Ansaldúa, This Bridge Called My Back, writings by radical women of color. As a brown feminist, I saw my life reflected in this powerful book, and it led me to the work and rich history of Chicana feminists. I am empowered by the words of Gloria Ansaldúa, who reminds us indígena, like corn, the mestiza is a product of crossbreeding designed for preservation under a variety of conditions. Like kernels, she clings to the cob with thick stalks and strong braced roots. She holds tight to the earth, and she will survive the crossroads. We will survive. We will thrive, but we have so much history and cultura, our comunidades, familias. We will thrive. Today, our co-host, Itzia, will be joining us in a little bit. So I get the honor of introducing our guest, Veronica Sandoval. And Itzia will talk about Veronica and her history and when she first met Lady Mariposa. But our guest today has a PhD in American Studies from the School of Languages, Cultures, and Race at Washington State University, otherwise known as WSU. She has been writing and performing poetry for over 20 years, and she has used her passion for literature, activisms, justice, and the Chicanx and Latinx community to fuel her work and publications in both creative and academic writing. Veronica, bienvenidas, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Marie, and thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, Consuelo, and thank you so much, Itzi, también, for thinking of me to be here with you all, with Abuelas en Acción, ready to talk about cholas. And the subject excites me, and I love the fact that I'm being interviewed by a bunch of mujeres that do good work, so I'm ready.
Thank you so much. And I would like to say, you might hear some background beautiful sounds, and that's my nietita, my 2-month, Julia Rose, who is here and is certainly chiming in and giving her opinion. And I do this work for her and all of our children and future generations. So to start us off, Veronica, can you please share a defining moment in your life
A defining moment in my life. Um, I think about, like, there's one where I woke up on the morning of my 25th birthday and decided I wanted to be a poet. I was going to be a poet. I kind of wrote, pero como que I necesitaba una dirección at that time, and I'm like, I'm gonna be a poet, right? So I ran off into the world, and what do poets do? They have poetry readings. So then I started putting together poetry readings. Y mind you, que ese tiempo I could count how many books I had read in my hands, right? Porque, I went to high school. I had graduated from high school, but I hadn't gone to college yet, right? So primero, I think the most defining moment for me is finding out that I had a voice and that I wanted to use it, right? And that's why I say, like, let's be a poet, because then I can talk back to power. I could say the things that are always in my head that I don't say out loud porque me da vergüenza, right? So I think it definitely was finding my voice. Y la segunda cosa era cuando andaba yo en las calles, being a street poet, talking about doing Chola poetry. I hadn't gone to school, y a mí no me podías decir vas a ir a la escuela, because I'm like, I don't need to go to school. There's some real good writers that ain't never gone to college, right? Y una vez I was working in un evento with a bunch of students, y había un jovencito who was real excited to be at the poetry workshop and working with me, ¿verdad? Y luego me preguntó el muchachito, y luego later on I found out that he was extended family. Me preguntó, like, hey, miss, like, how far did you get in college, or what grade did you go to in college? And even though, like, with like normal folks, I would be like, I don't gotta go to college. With this jovencito at this event that was made for college recruitment, I couldn't say that shit, So oops. Disclaimer, la chola dice maldiciones. I'm sorry, yo.
No, está bien. No te preocupes.
I couldn't say that to the jovencito, so I said, I've never been to college, actually. And that look on his face changed, and his engagement and excitement changed, right? And I couldn't blame him for that, because he was excited to be working with me, right? And so then ese punto, I was like, well, I still want to work with homeboy. Like, I still want to have connections to students like that. And the people that are letting me work with students like him are pre-college programs, are people, and a degree would, like, let me into the door to be able to talk to students like him and continue the conversations para que no cabe aquí la conversación. And so I said, well, let me go to college to see, like, what I can write about, so I can, like, find more things to write about. So those were like two defining moments, knowing that I realized that I wanted access to still continue conversations with folks, and that maybe this degree could teach me things to say, but then also allow me access to talk with our communities, right? So I think those were two big things. And then I went to college, and después de eso, todo el jale cambió,
Yeah. So I see Itzia is with us, and we're so happy to have you. And we will let you. I told our listeners that you will share your history with Lady Mariposa and talk about that. But I just wanted to say, on our part, we recently have embraced poetry and writing as as mayores. And it's been due to your friend and our friend, Brian Fry, who has shared that, Shakespeare did not define writing, and that our words are beautiful words. And so that's a message that we convey again and again to our listeners is, and I see it for me as decolonizing my writing, and that I never saw it as something. I did what I had to do in school, but I never saw myself as being able to share my soul, and knowing that I've had that in me all the time, and yet I didn't think it was academic enough. So this is wonderful to hear about your defining moment, Veronica.
Thank you, Marie. No, and totally there with you. That's the reason Lady Mariposa came out at first, because when I decided I'm gonna be a poet, I was like, "Y yo quien chingado soy?" Like, I don't hardly read books. I don't go to school. How can I call myself a poet? So I had to give myself permission to be a poet. So I made up the name Lady Mariposa, and through this name, then Lady Mariposa was the poet, not Veronica Sandoval, who lived on the border with no education. It had to give myself permission, you know. Ya con tiempo, I learned to understand that Lady Mariposa was still Veronica Sandoval, and she was no longer giving me permission. But I understand that thing about, are my words good enough? Can I even call myself this? And the fact that nosotros as working class Mexicanos that come from, like, we're first gen students, like that we can have the leisure time to sit and think and write poems, right? Like, so no, I totally feel you with is this good enough? And there is power in poetry. That's how I started my whole academic journey, through poetry.
That's what I want to say first. Marie, we've talked many, many episodes and many times before how the universe, I truly believe that the universe has put us and brought us all together for a purpose.
Mhm.
And this goes back to my freshman year when I first met you back in 2019. I took your comparative ethnic studies class, and that was the first time I had ever heard of any professor. I came with the idea from high school that, oh, college is hard. Your professors won't let this pass. Your professors are hard asses. Like, coming to into your class and completely being faced with a different environment that was very welcoming, but then also hearing my language and you introducing yourself that first day, like, I am a Chola, and continuing to talk about that narrative completely changed my perspective on barrio and Chola community. Because growing up, I know, like many of our listeners, my mom was always like, no vayas a ser Chola, no andes con los cholillos. And there was always this negative connotation around it. But now that I've been growing up, I can see that that is completely different. And it is not that. And I feel you have brought that definition to my awareness. And I really want to see if you could share that with our listeners as well, and kind of how that history of the Chola community and how we have changed the narrative and continue to do so, and why it is just in general so important to decolonize concepts like this, and as long and other concepts that fall into our communities too.
Thank you. I can't believe that it's been so long since I've seen you. I'm so glad that como dices, our worlds collided, ¿verdad? And we're together. So you got to see me in esos tiempos when I was like an early professor, ¿verdad? And para mí it was definitely, that's why I begin with Soy Chola, right? Because there's something to be said about finding like the ITZYs in the room who ain't never had connections to academia. They're first gen, and they're like, you can be an academic and be like that, y'all. Por eso dice la chola esa maldiciones, because even in my syllabus it's like, you reserve the right to say bad words in my class. Sorry, because tenemos que, like you say, decolonize or change this idea of what académicos are, right? And so like when you talk about decolonizing concepts, I definitely do not want to decolonize, because the concept of a chola is so like, is it colonial? Like, do we decolonize that? No, what we're trying to stop, or rather tell people like, párale su pedo, is the people that say cholas and cholos are nothing but thug losers with no point and purposes. That's the shit we need to stop, you know. Lo que es la chola always has been a political como se dice, agent in her neighborhood, in her communities. Chola identity and sort of Chola resistant practices are learned practices that homegirls have to do in neighborhoods in order to survive. Also connected to family and community practices. And for me, really, Chola identity is at its ground and at its base a political term in identity, right? So a lot of people se clavan a esa identidad, which is why then you say like, hey, I went to college, but the reason I survived survived college was because I was a Chola being educated, right? And I survived it my way, right? In that sort of political grounding, I find my own way to be able to create new knowledges or create new ideas or come at things from different perspectives. Porque en todo lo que hago, I'm a Chola or a person that identifies politically as a Chola, doing labor, learning, creating new knowledges and things like that. So no, definitely. And so I often bring in para todo, la chola this, la chola that, and people are like, oh, here she comes, the lady with the cholas, right? And it's because todo todavía, like when you tell people your project is on cholas and your scholarship centers cholas, they'll roll their eyes at you. Eso no ha cambiado, you know what I'm saying? And so it really then it really challenges that idea when it's like, nah, I don't care if you roll your eyes, it's a thing. And I'm actually going to use the chola lens, right, to talk about all sorts of different things and really challenge what you think you know, and even challenge what the value of a good Latino is, because often we talk about goodness and Latino-ness, and we talk about upward mobility, right? ¿Qué tanto dinero agarras? ¿Qué tantos diplomas? ¿Qué buen trabajo tienes? ¿Qué bien hablas, right? And to like challenge that idea to say like, sometimes life and a good life isn't all that. Life and a good life is being able to provide for your family, even if that is like having to use food stamps, even if that is living in certain neighborhoods, even if that is you can't go to college, but you still try your best and you center community knowledges and you do things in your neighborhood, how that is resistance, you know, in different ways, right? And how we should also talk and uplift those kinds of ways of being, and not just agarra los diplomas, agarra el dinero y olvídate de donde vienes, you know? So thank you. So that's one of the reasons why I'm definitely homegirl in the classroom. But I know a lot of homies that are my friends who also teach ethnic studies and other courses también that still come at it as a chola. And I think it matters to be seen in these spaces and for somebody to wholeheartedly embrace it sin vergüenza, you know?
Claro que sí. And I think back in 2019, that is something que I have carried with me since that class that I took with you and continue to do so. And I feel that I have only been able to just add more. And
nice.
For me, I very much like you and your mission. I want to go back to schools. I want to hit my communities and be that one teacher that a student needs, because all it takes is one. And I think that bringing these topics to our communities, especially our Latino communities that are so unaware of it just fuels the movement as well. And I think hopefully our listeners can take this away and go back, tell their families, tell their friends, because I aside from you and the Chola conference, which we'll get into a little bit here next, but as well, just the concept, I think it's shared and something that is missing a lot of times in our communities.
Yes, no, thank you for saying that, because that you want to labor. It's not like I want to get diplomas and then go off into like institutions and lock myself. That work of coming back to the community is hella important. And the fact that a lot of that work happens through discussions that center subjects in people's neighborhoods, identity practices in people's neighborhood, is a great place that you can be that change or that impact to that one student, because they never even saw themselves in the potential of higher ed, much less in the potential of embracing anything in higher ed that looks like their neighborhood, sounds like the neighborhood. So no, definitely about doing work and coming back and returning. And I'm glad que todavía haces ese jale, and that we all do, right? That que los gusta ese jale. So awesome.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times it's even difficult talking to, I know for me, coming to school, being like, Mom, I want to be a teacher. Her being like, teachers don't make money.
Oh gosh.
And so
I agree, but that's okay.
It took me sharing these experiences that I was having in college with such amazing women, such amazing Latino communities, for me to share with my mom, look, like this Veronica's doing all of this. And I remember my freshman year telling my mom right after your class, Mom, you won't believe the teacher I have. She's a chola. She's been del barrio. I'm like, she talks laid back. She's so cool. I was like, I'm so excited. And I still grab onto that, and I still go back and share with my mom. And I'm like, Mom, look, this is what I want. I was like, the same way that others changed me, I want to change others. And through now writing and through being just aware of all of these tools, and Brian, he helped us amazing to work with a poetry and kind of reclaiming writing. It's just been almost a euphoric feeling of just having the opportunity and the to be so surrounded by all these people and being able to share that back to everyone. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's like I was telling Marie and Consuelo antes de que vinieras, because you were stuck in traffic, that that I really did, because they were telling me their stories. The fact is that finding other mujeres that do that labor, right? There's something about women's spaces. There's something about that energy. There's something about doing community work with people that also do community work, right? And I think it's a magic space, which is why I love La Chola Conference. I just love hanging with my homegirls in any way that I can, because that energy, right? Like that warmness, that thing is fueling, because it's the al último, you still got to go and do classes and write papers. Y está pesado ese jale, right? So that we can come back and plug in to these community spaces, these in its labor, like the kind of work that you then end up doing in community. Pero it fuels us, right? And it keeps us grounded and continuing forward, porque lo pesado es lo pesado. Pero perdido, I have awesome, beautiful energy spaces to kind of plug into and remind myself of why I'm doing anything, you know?
Yeah, of course. And like we've talked about, also the abuelas, having all our past abuelas just holding us as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Gracias, Veronica. We were talking earlier, Marie and I, before everybody got on, about the word chola, no? Again, growing up in a very small northeastern Nevada town with maybe 12 Mexican-American families, it was very small, majority white. And then we also had a Native American reservation right outside of town. Pero the word chola también, it was always more negative, about what that meant. But there was also, this wanting to know more, right? So if you saw something like, I'm thinking of Stand and Deliver, one of the first movies, right? And seeing one person that makes a difference, in la comunidad, with all the young people. So I'm just taken with this incredible opportunity to learn more, and to know that it evolves. We were talking about language, like how language evolves, when the whole discussion around Latino, Latina, and how that changes, Latinx, Latine, and all the discussions that come with that. But like with the Chola and Cholos, it's just really rich. I worked in Woodburn years ago as a director of a learning center, and we had a lot of little Cholillos and Cholas, and they were so proud of who they were and what they did. And we were, to me, it was just trying to understand and support, because there was a lot of trauma that was going on in the community and in their personal lives. But having kids, young people, come back to you and knowing, that there was somebody that looked like them, and that they would talk, and having young kids that were teen parents at 14 and at 15, and had been in the system and coming out with their little teardrops, on their eyes, so it was really an amazing time. And just to support, the community in Woodburn, the young people that were at our learning center. So, like I say, every time we do this incredible podcast, there's so much that still comes up for me, that touches my corazón, and so thankful. So in saying that, I'm just so glad that you're there. Itzia is doing what she's doing, and just what our future will look like and how we can support as much as we can. So I'm so blessed to be part of this. And in saying that, now my question really is about the conference. I know your efforts in building community and highlighting Chola narratives is at La Chola Conference. The 2023 conference took place in October. And La Chola, Reclaiming Indigenous Yereria Identities and Celebrating Ceremonia in Chola Spaces. That's beautiful. And the mission of La Chola Conference is to provide space in academia to understand real narratives, real life narratives, unveil history, and expose stereotypes, and bridge body of knowledge and education, which is incredible. I wish I had that when I was younger. But it seems like two conference attendees have shared the following quotes. One is, I learned that I will be able to do anything in life and in school, despite what people say about the color of my skin or race. And the second is, I learned that no matter what you are raised from, you can still do what you want to put your mind to, and to always fight for your rights, just as for others too. So can you please tell us about this year's conference and the journey to the founding of this wonderful experience and conference that is annual?
Wow. Thank you for that question, because then it gives me the opportunity to talk about my homegirls again. Love women's spaces, love the energy that happens when people form sisterhoods or work with each other for a common cause, a thing they believe in, an identity and an identity practice, a practice that they believe in. So La Chola Conference is this event, this thing that's put together by the Homegirl Association. And the Homegirl Association is a collection of women from all over the US. And sometimes we have had a male member before. Dr. Juan Santos from Califas, the very first year, helped us. But pretty much after that, it's just a space of a bunch of women that get together on Zoom. Yay! Casi no los miramos. We might see each other one time a year. But we plan the conference throughout the year via Zoom. The person that's on the ground at the event place that they're going to have tú sabes, when you put a conference, a lot of jale, putting the things together, doing a lot of running around and things like that. And all of us will work on different things like the call for proposals, promotions, calling folks back and asking them for information, bios, all sorts of things. There's all sorts of labor that happens through the Homegirl Association. But La Chola Conference in itself is an idea that originated from my comadre, who I really wish was here, Madeline Alviso Ramirez, who is the Chola co-founder of Chola Pinup and founder of Chola Vida, who began thinking about La Chola Conference when she was much younger, right? And con tiempo, she actually, through her network and getting to know a bunch of different women that worked in academia, that were part of the community, that were like, hey, Chola Conference, right? Y un día, one of the homegirls, Dr. Vanessa Bustamantes, who is a Dr. Chola, right? Hold on, homegirl PhD. Oh my God, I'm gonna mess it up. She's gonna get mad at me. Porque todo el tiempo, Dr. Bustamantes, Vanessa, hold on. Dr. Bustamantes. And she said she was working at Miracosta College at that time in Califas, and she's like, let's do it. Like, I'll bring it to my colegio. And that was the very first year that we had planned on doing it. Y Doctora Bustamantes ended up doing a lot of labor to get that done. But you know how it is in academia, when you try to bring something like La Chola Conference on campus, there was a lot of pushback from administration and like the people that were her bosses. So hubo pedo, y luego pasó COVID, and then we couldn't do it there. And so the very first one ended up happening at WSU. So there's this whole really rich history for La Chola Conference. And let's see. And so pause. what was the question again? Me perdí with sorry, there you go. The homegirl that I was going to tell you about is Homegirl Doctora. And so this conference has happened for 3 years, and it does exactly what you all said. I love how you all summed it up. It's creating homegirl spaces. It's creating and bringing and kind of bridging lo que es lo académico and lo que es in the streets that's practiced by community, right? And it's when you bridge these divides that magical things can happen, like what happened at the 2023 conference, which ended up happening at Yakima, right? At Yakima College just recently in October, where you have women who are like cholas, proclaimed cholas in their 60s, hanging out with cholas in their 40s and chola in their 30s, and then having a group of upward bound little cholitas from high school with their moms coming to La Chola conference. And you start seeing the sort of intergenerational conversations and connections. So not only are young cholas looking at older cholas and older self-identified cholas talk about Chola scholarship or just talking about scholarship as cholas, then they're actually learning what it means to be a chola by sitting there with their hoops, with their own self-identified understanding of being chola and saying, this is chola space. So you have like these sort of intergenerational conversations happening. Y porque este año fue a space for spirituality and sort of chola spiritual practices and connections to indigeneity. Tuvimos varias sesiones where we were, doing like clean, like what ritualistic sort of like conversations, cleanings, unpackings, a lot of good work, you know what I'm saying? And so it was just a really beautiful space, pero creo que pasan cosas in that space in 2 layers. One is like, check out what cholas are doing, both in the academy and on the street. And we try to then bring in voices even from jóvenes, right? One of the peoples that presented at our conference were like los hijos de Madeline Alviso Ramirez, her children, and then the children of Mona Valindero from Califas, because their children have actually been activists since from the womb, with like Metzi Landeros actually like being in her mama's belly when she's marching at the Cesar Chavez march, and then like going into labor, and then seeing pictures of her desde chiquitita at different marches and protests, right? And having them and talking about their chola identities and how important they are. So it's like totally just this beautiful space. And when you look at it, it's like, well, is this academic? Well, yeah, but is it community? It's like both, because we on purpose, the Homegrown Association tries to keep the Chola conference at community colleges and sort of like mix between colleges and universities, but even doing call outs to say we don't have to be in a university space. If you have a community center and would like to host us for the 2024 conference, let us know. We want to go to LA, any space we'd like to do the conference at. So it really sort of takes out of context what is a traditional conference, especially when the conference is happening and there's niños running around playing, and that's not what you see at the conference. And shh, siéntense, right? Like even the bringing the children into this space and knowing that homegirls are mothers and van a venir con ellos, right? Even that changes things, right? That was one of the commentary that a lot of the cholas that were visiting and were participating this year was like, I should have brought my kids. Like I never would have thought to bring my kids to like a conference, that how impactful it is to like be a part of it, see their mothers be a part of it, see other homegirls be a part of it, dancing, having fun, creating like Chola space. So it's just, oh, I love La Chola conference. So it took me a while to get there.
Well, no, it just sounds incredible, to have the space where everybody, las mujeres, can be who they are. Mm-hmm. and start identifying what that means for them. Yes. Which I think is really, really important, because as I said earlier, that word, growing up, it was really a mystery to me, pero it was always, when it was talked about in a negative, in a negative connotation, but because I didn't have the experience, that's what kind of stayed with me. And then when I got to Woodburn and worked at the learning center there, I started to see it differently, so I think it's just really important también, just because it's about learning and it's about embracing and what that means for las mujeres over time.
Yes, Consuelo. And I think that was one of the life sort of like affirming things that, man, we're doing good work at the Chola conference, is that a lot of the mujeres were like, thank you for this space. Like, I knew that I had this identity, but I never knew that I could share it, or that there were so many of us that I could claim that. Because part of us, especially again, when we start getting our degrees or we start doing things in community, te dicen that's bad, quítate de eso, right? And so you kind of erase it. But to find and come into a space where you've got people that are like cholas with PhDs and cholas without PhDs, and young folks and old folks and young activists coming together to actually affirm that identity that so many folks have told you is bad. Por eso la raza nunca avanza, right? To be like, no, fuck that. We're actually going to center that, because de allí es la resistencia, la identidad, la historia, comunidad, all of these important things that, as you said, when the young Chicanitos like see you and you're talking like that and you're bringing that in, they get excited. I mean, I've talked to third and fourth graders at un evento aquí. It's like a chicas evento. It's a conference that PCC has that I did last year. And I was talking to third and fourth graders, and I'm like, what the hell am I going to tell third and fourth graders? And so then, like, I talked about cholas. What kind of things can you do if you're a chola? What kind of things can you research? You can research chismes, lowriders, trocas, like they got excited about that being something that they could do in the academy. You could talk about your abuelas remedios and how they heal in their community. All of that is knowledge that you can bring to the academy. And people get it, and the jovencitos get excited about that, and finding a space where that becomes centered again. And it's not just about memorize this or remember pass this test. It's about, hey, it's about us bringing our knowledges, because ya venimos de comunidades with knowledges, right? Yeah. We're not going to go back to our communities to save them. Our communities actually come with us, and we center that in the academy, right? So yeah. It's just really affirming, I think, to find other mujeres that do that kind of work, and coming into a space where you claim on to a political identity, and it's chingos of you, and it feels good,
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
And I totally agree. I think the stories, I think, kind of highlighting our stories and telling your own is something that I know for me is also very new. And I have students, they're called actually Las Mariposas. And so it was our first interaction with English was this past summer, and it was in writing in Afra, which is, you must know, it's a repeating poem, and we use the template I Am From. And in doing so, Brian, who led us through these writing prompts and helped us provide this sort of space and mental health area for our conference for Familias en Acción this past summer. And he mentioned to us, and part of where a few people got their idea of the I Am From poems and were inspired was your poem, There Are Cholas. And he uses as an example of you using your own voice. And my question would be we would be honored if you could read your poem to us and just share your thoughts on English and using it as a tool to not only heal yourself, but also express and advocate and just bring connection to our communities.
No, and thank you for that question, because la neta, there are cholas, pero la neta, it's about like you say, storytelling and the fact that you can have a voice, right? Like that's the power of poetry and writing. And that poem that you're talking about, that poem that repeats the there are, or I come from, that litany poem, right? That keeps repeating that language, is one of the workshops that we end up doing with jovencitos, like, hey, let's write a poem, right? Where are you from? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like, right? Huele a tortillas, a downy, right? For my mom's house, huele a downy. So that kind of stuff, right? There is magic in that, but in the power of just saying that out loud. So writing, claiming it, and saying it out loud. You'll be surprised how for young folks, it's the first time anybody ever stops to listen, and they actually like physically understanding or like visibly understanding or mentally understanding that people are listening, right? And there's power in a poem like that. So I'm so glad that that mariposas are embracing writing, that you're embracing writing, that como dice Maria and Consuelo were talking about the importance of writing that it's playing now, right? In all of the work that's being done, especialmente when that writing gets presented a voz alta. That's power, right? So yes, I would love to share There Are Cholas. It's actually a poem that I start off my dissertation with. Porque there are cholas, and because I am a chola. Okay, voy a leer el poema. Okay. There are cholas feathering their hair, and only the smell of hairspray remains in the empty rooms of Saturday night con las homegirls. There are cholas finally edging the tips of their razor-sharp eyes. The more perfect the upward swish, the more fierce the stare. There are cholas under boulevard lights with windows open, rolas blasting, cruising, looking to take home memories, to take home stories for the next time cholas get together to chismear. There are cholas at bus stops, at offices, in universities, in backyard jardines healing with good bruja rituals. There are cholas being political, cholas creating third spaces, cholas cultivating kinships. There are cholas embracing babies, cholas embracing lovers, cholas embracing themselves. There are cholas hociconas, cholas peleoneras, cholas muy nice, cholas with voices the patriarch tries to hush up, cholas vida loca that everyone expects to not go far, cholas activistas who believe themselves agents for social change, cholas raging against the injustices in their hood, cholas de public spaces, de los lugares within the need, cholas, you are barrio chingonas in political praxis, you are the community academics return to with our PhDs and theoretical notions of what it takes to tell the narratives you wear every day on your skin. Yay, there are
Oh,
Oh,
incredible.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you. That's one of my homegirls' favorite poems. They're like, I love this poem. Of course you love it. It's for you, homegirls. Like that's one of the things que si vas a escribir something about cholas, like especially when I was working on my dissertation, they're like, hey, you need to give me a definition for cholas. And they challenged me and I was like, I don't want to. Cholas are everything. I can't give it. They're like, you're doing a project on cholas. You need a definition, mujer. And I was like, all right. And they told me as I was crying, because it was hard for me to be like, I don't want to speak for cholas, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to speak of what their truths are, to then say, but if you're going to give them a definition, give them one that honors them, that respects them, that celebrates them. And so I definitely, I think I did one that did that, but definitely I think that same sentiment is one that I definitely had in mind when I wrote this poem, There Are Cholas.
Yeah, or you could feel it. Definitely.
Yeah.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. I was just, the images for me and just, those powerful, just the images, all my senses, that is beautiful. You touched on those. Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Marie. And hopefully like that folks that are out there que saben y conocen cholas to be like, wait, we should celebrate the homegirls because they're the ones that make sure we survive and resist. Like, what can we write to celebrate the mujeres, las guerrilleras, las resistentes, las resistantes, those resistant folks in our neighborhoods that have ensured we survive? We should write them love poems because it is a love poem for the women in our neighborhoods that have ensured that we survived.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we need them even more now in this world.
Yeah.
We're screwed up here. And so, and we, we need to, that's why it's so important that we have these conversations. And like Itzia says, we hope that our listeners will take this home to your familia and you will share what you're hearing, because we have somehow been led to believe in our country and our global world that, you know, it's the white narrative that counts, and it's those big words that my family, you know, we never use those words, but I learned them by going to college, and I learned how to assimilate into academia, into, you know, a career, a beautiful career, but it has been dominated by white culture and what is defined as professional. And so we're taking that back, and that's what we do on our podcast, is we bring Veronica to talk to us about how our background counts, our knowledge counts, and every single thing we do to raise children, to raise los gatos in the neighborhood. In San Antonio, we have gatos everywhere, and los perritos, and everybody has a hand in making sure that they're fed and they're taken care of. And
Cholas love cats.
So thank you for that. And I want to hear from Itzia and Consuelo, but Veronica, before we end, are there any last words, any concluding thoughts that you wanted to share with us? This has been beautiful. Oh my gosh.
And thank you all so much for creating this space. This is awesome. And I have a list of a bunch of homegirls you would love to talk to that I'm so happy to share with you.
Please, please, we would love it. We would love it.
Yeah, well, all I want to say is that in everything you do, like we're having a conversation about the importance of identity, todo este pedo, right? But in everything you do, like always plántense and remember that you are not the maker of the revolution, that there have been many before us that have done the labor and have already like kind of started cutting out like roadmaps for us, right? And that we need to both do work that reaches forward, but then also reaches back, right? To remember all of that so that we can do the jale that we do real chingona like, right? So,
yeah.
And que viva la chola.
Que viva la chola. Yes.
Que viva la chola.
I like that. Yeah. Well, I would just like to también add again, gracias. You know, I just always go back and reflect and see what that is. And it's just so inspiring, you know, not for us who have been through a different road or like road but didn't know that we were cholas, right? And those who we bring forward and what that means. Entonces, gracias.
Yes. Thank you, Consuelo. Thank you, Marie, and thank you, Itzia, for trayéndome.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yo también quería decir gracias, not only por estar aquí, but also you have impacted my life, and I know now many of our listeners' lives as well, and just not as a reminder to not lose our roots. And I think that is something that I had a privilege to experience, hearing from you my first year of college, nearly my first day of being faced with and being told to never forget who I was, and not only to continue through academia, but continue through academia being true to myself. And like we mentioned a little bit more, whitewashing it in a sense, where I felt that I had to act a certain way, I had to speak a certain way, I had to read at a certain level, write at a certain level. And because of you, I was able and have been able to continue my college career and continue to just move forward with still holding who I am and who I am myself. And so with almost tears in my eyes, porque soy bien chillona, I want to
Yay, chillonas, I love it. Itzia, thank you so much, because a veces haces este jale and you know, you think like I'm doing good work, I guess, but there's something to be said about meeting folks and then learning about what they're doing, that you had an impact in your life. Y a veces some of us will live our whole lives and never hear that. So te doy muchas gracias for continuing to like fuel me to say, you know, you're doing work that matters, you know, so that's an important thing. So thank you, Itzia. I really appreciate it.
We are honored to our treasured listeners who have joined us today, and we know that you have found today's interview as much of a treat as we have. And we thank Familias en Acción in Portland, Oregon, for their commitment to Abuelas and their generous support. We could not do Abuelas without them. And please, you can go to familiasenaccion.org to find out more about their community health equity. Las promotoras de salud, they rock. And they are doing so much work, including work on climate justice. Join us again on Abuelas en Acción. Gracias.